What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today we're going to look at the Sean Avery trade, which occurred back on March 11th, 2003. Now, essentially, the Detroit Red Wings kind of knew that in order for their 0-2-0-3 campaign to progress far in the playoffs, they needed to add a defenseman, a solid defenseman at that. So, as a result, they decided to ship a bunch of assets, 4 different assets, to the LA Kings in exchange for Mathieu Schneider. The biggest name that they traded away would become the infamous Sean Avery. So how did this trade work out? We're going to start by looking at the Detroit Red Wings, who would receive defenseman Mathieu Schneider. Now, across 13 games for them in the regular season, Schneider scored 2 goals with 5 assists. He did not manage any points as the Red Wings were upset in the first round of the playoffs. But fortunately for Detroit, he did decide to re-sign, and he had a solid year in 03-04, registering 14 goals with 32 assists. Now, he chose to kind of take the year off. He didn't play anywhere during the lockout-canceled 04-05 season, and he seemed to respond well with the time off, as he had a career year in 05-06, setting career marks in goals with 21 and points with 59. He had another very strong year in 06-07, scoring 11 goals with a career-high 41 assists. But at that point, he kind of priced himself out of Detroit's price range, so he would walk as a free agent. Still, successful stint for him as a Red Wings. So, how did the LA Kings do? So the Kings got 4 assets, and of course the first of which was the player in the title, Sean Avery, the left wing. Now, Avery had a goal with 3 assists in 12 games during the 02-03 season, and he played exactly how you would expect him to do in 03-04. He had 28 points combined, while he led the league with a career-high 261 penalty minutes. During the 04-05 lockout, Avery was very vocal about his dissatisfaction with how the NHLPA handled the whole situation. And he came back in 05-06 and he had a decent year. He scored 15 goals with 24 assists. Now he once more would lead the league in penalty minutes with 257. Now, he was essentially suspended for the last 3 games that season as he refused to take part in the team drill, and the coaches were like, alright, you know what, goodbye. We're not dealing with you, just go home. Now, across 55 games in the 06-07 season, Avery put together a decent performance, managing 10 goals with 18 assists and 116 penalty minutes. But at that point, they decided to trade him away mid-season. Now, sometime after he was traded away, a couple people came out, Kings players and coaches alike, and they said that Avery would constantly pick on players, specifically Dustin Brown. He would kind of mock his lisp, and then he started going after his girlfriend, so not exactly a good thing to do as a teammate. Needless to say, the Kings were happy to finally move on from him. You know, he was a bit of a problem in the locker room, so it's always good to get rid of those types of players. Now, they traded him to the New York Rangers in exchange for 4 assets. And the first asset we'll look at was a 2008 third-round pick, which would become the 81st. And this would be flipped to the Buffalo Sabres to move up 7 spots. So they got the 74th pick in 2008, and they would use this to select defenseman Andrew Campbell. Now, Campbell would spend the vast majority of his 6 years with the organization in the AHL. He did appear in 3 NHL games for the Kings themselves, but he only managed 4 shots, 3 hits, and 1 block shot before he walked as a free agent. So the other 3 players that they got in the Sean Avery trade, the first of which would be center Marc-Andre Cliche. Now, Cliche spent the majority of his 3-year stint with the organization as a solid checking line forward. He didn't play a single NHL game, or he did play a single NHL game, I should say. He would record 1 hit with 1 block shot, but other than that, he was an AHLer and he walked after that time was up. The next player was center Jan Marek. Now, Marek, he never came over to the United States, so unfortunately for the Kings, nothing came of him. And they also got right wing Jason Ward. Now, Ward appeared in 7 games for the Kings, recording a single assist before he was traded to the Tampa Bay Lightning for a 2007 pick, the 137th overall. And this would be used to select center Joshua Turnbull. Now, Turnbull himself spent a couple seasons in the ECHL, but then he would walk as a free agent. So that's how they did with the Avery to the Kings or the Rangers trade. How did the other players that the Kings got from the original trade do? So the next player we're going to look at is defenseman Maxim Kuznetsov, and Kuznetsov would appear in 19 games at the NHL level for LA. He scored a single assist, but he did give them 20 penalty minutes, so there's that. He spent most of his year and a half with the team in the AHL, though. And then, essentially, when the lockout happened, he went to Russia, and he just never returned back to the NHL because he decided he had better opportunities out there. Can't blame him. Now, they also got a pair of draft picks here. The first of which was a 2003 first-round pick, which would be the 27th overall. This would be used to select a left wing, Jeff Tambellini. Now, Tambellini himself, he would sign his entry-level deal after spending 2 more years in college, so they kind of held on to his rights for a couple years. And then he would spend most of the year in the AHL, although he did appear in 4 games for the Kings themselves. Managed 6 shots and 2 penalty minutes before he was demoted, and then he would end up getting traded. We did discuss this in the Roberto Luongo trade. That will be linked in the description below. Now, the last asset that the Kings got was a 2004 second-round pick, which would become the 64th overall, and this would be traded to the Boston Bruins in exchange for 2 assets. The first asset is center Josef Stumpel. Now, Stumpel would appear in 64 games in a single season, recording 8 goals with 29 assists before walking. Now, they also got a 2003 7th-round pick. This would be the 213th overall selection, which would be traded to the Nashville Predators in exchange to move up a bit. Now, they moved up to the 174th pick, and with that, they would pick center Esa Perns, and Perns would spend 1 year in the U.S., appearing in 57 NHL games, scoring 3 goals with 8 assists before he returned to Europe. A lot of these players just didn't necessarily pan out in the United States. So, that's how the Kings did. That's how the Red Wings did. How did the secondary teams do? Of course, we're going to start with the New York Rangers because they got the infamous Sean Avery. Now, Avery put together a solid half season in New York. He would score 8 goals with 12 assists, and he added 58 penalty minutes. He managed to record 27 penalty minutes in their 10 playoff games that year, too. Now, he had a strong year in the 07-08 campaign, as he would score 15 goals with 18 assists while adding 154 penalty minutes. Now, he had another controversial moment come up during the 2008 Eastern Conference Finals against the New Jersey Devils. He faced Devils goaltender Martin Brodeur while waving his stick and arms in Brodeur's face as an attempt to block his view. After the game, almost immediately after the game, the NHL added a new rule, the Avery rule. This rule made it that if a player attempted to distract the goaltender while clearly not playing the puck, he would receive a minor penalty. Now, he would walk after the season, and he would eventually return, and that's where he started, just kind of his career really went downhill. But he was a very interesting player for the Rangers. Now, they also got left wing John Seymour in this trade, and he didn't sign with the team after spending a year in the OHL. So how did the other teams do? We'll look at Buffalo first. So they got a pair of picks in the 2008 draft, the first of which was the 81st, which would be used to select defenseman Corey Feinhage. And Feinhage would spend a couple years in the minors before leaving the organization. They also got the 101st pick, which they would use to select right wing Justin Jokinen. And Jokinen, he didn't do anything. He didn't really play professional hockey at all. Next, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning, who got right wing Jason Ward. Now, Ward would score 4 goals with 4 assists in 17 games in his first half season as a Lightning. And then he would play well in the 07-08 season, recording 8 goals with 6 assists in a bottom 6 role. Across 24 he would only appear in 1 game in the 08-09 season, but he did not score, so nothing really happened, and then he would walk as a free agent. Next, we have the Boston Bruins. So they got a pair of draft picks here. The first of which was a 2003 4th-round pick, which would become the 129th, and would be used to select a right wing Patrick Valkic. And Valkic went to Czechia and did not sign with Boston. Now, they also got a 2004 second-rounder, which would become the 64th pick, and it would also be used on a right wing. This one, Martins Karstums. Now, Karstums spent 3 years in the system, but most of that time was in the AHL with Providence. Across 24 NHL games, he would score 1 goal while adding 5 assists. Lastly, we have the Nashville Predators. Now, the Predators got a couple of 7th-round picks in this trade, and they were both in 2003. The first which was the 210th, which would be used on defenseman Andrei Makovchev. And Makovchev never came over stateside as he would spend his entire playing career in Russia, where they also got the 213th pick, and this would be used on goaltender Miroslav Hanujuk. And Hanujuk never came to the United States, instead deciding to spend his playing career in Czechia. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was the Sean Avery trade. One of the more, I probably could have called it the Mathieu Schneider trade, but Sean Avery, to me, is the player that people remember because of his attitude. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good rest of your day.